just carrying on with the skeletons or the Nephilim. So some of these children of the Homo sapiens sapiens, but also children of the fallen angels, which is the Anunnaki. And bearing in mind the Anunnaki were about 10 to 12 feet themselves, but some of these skeletons that were found are humongous size, as you can probably see here. So the Smithsonian actually had a court case in the early 1900s, and the court ordered the Smithsonian to tell them why there's no giant skeletons, even though people were giving them over to the Smithsonian Institute Museum. And they turned around and said that they don't want the narrative to be changed from what it is. In other words, what the Bible, the Bible, not the true Bible, which was the Book of Enoch, but the Bible that's been changed by people like the Smithsonian, who forced their narrative on us. You may have heard of David and Goliath. Well, Goliath was a Nephilim, a giant, and they were cannibalistic, ultra-violent. Now, these giants carried on living even after the Great Flood, and the Great Flood was done deliberately because the king of Nibiru, Anu, didn't like the fact that the bloodline, their bloodline, the true Anunnaki's bloodline, was mixed in with the Homo sapiens sapiens. So the idea was to wipe out everything on this planet. However, some of the Anunnaki didn't like the idea that their creations, which is the Homo sapiens sapiens, the hybrids, were actually going to perish. So Noah, by the time the flood version came along, Noah was around and he was warned. Now, there is some speculations that the giants are still around to this day. In fact, army whistleblowers have said that they've actually killed a giant in one of the Afghanistan caves, not where normal people hide, but where giants hide. So I've talked about the Anunnaki being called our gods. We called them gods, as mentioned in the previous video. Now, the problem we've got is the god with the big white beard. Yes, it does actually match the Anunnaki. They did have either white or red hair. But how did they move around? So they had spaceships. Now, the spaceships looked a bit like this. This is one of the carvings. And there's various other descriptions around that sort of give hints that they used some sort of fuel as opposed to anti-gravity. The Bible, which, as mentioned before, is a retelling of the Book of Enoch, talks about great fire coming from the sky or a loud thunder sound and sort of the god arrived. So it leads me to believe that they did use some sort of propulsion as opposed to anti-gravity. So as time moved on, and after the flood, the Anunnaki, some of them allowed the humans to carry on. And in fact, they actually taught them things. And the first place to be taught laws and maths and everything else is, wait for it, the same place that they landed, which is Sumeria, or Mesopotamia, as it's called, as the larger region. So the larger region is Mesopotamia, which is right next door to Egypt, which I will cover in another video. So the Anunnaki started to teach all of our laws, and that's where we understood what a king is, what a queen is, what the laws are, which leads on to the Ten Commandments, which was given by the Anunnaki to Moses as a way of helping humans, or Homo sapiens sapiens, understand what's right and wrong. I just briefly touched on the Ten Commandments in the last video, which are supposedly put inside the Ark of the Covenant. Now, I believe the Ark of the Covenant was a power source or a weapon, or both. And the reason why I believe that is because when you read up on it, whoever was holding the Ark would absolutely annihilate the enemy, armies of enemies. And certain people could only carry the Ark of the Covenant. And these were high priests, and on reading upon it, there's some sort of device that they had on their chests which allowed them to communicate to God. So I'm thinking obviously it's some sort of radio communication of some sort. But what's interesting is the size of the covenant is in cubits, is exactly the same size as the what they called the tomb in the Great Pyramid, the King's Chamber. But it wasn't a tomb, because no one was ever buried in